He's a long way from Wanganui, New Zealand, but he's driving like this is his home track today.
He can see the checkered flag from here. Earl Bamber will celebrate his first win at Petit Le Mans.
This isn't just another win, guys. This is one of the majors.
Yeah.
This is a big event to have on your resume.
Well, hello again, everyone. I'm Matt Yocum. Welcome to another edition of the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast, the final show for 2025, and a fun one that we have lined up for you. My teammate from NBC Sports, Calvin Fish, he'll be along a little later here in studio. We'll talk about 2025, also looking ahead to 26, and even back to when he won the Rolex 24. And also, what a way to end 2025 for Action Express Cadillac Racing. We've got Earl Bamber in studio to talk about back-to-back wins at Indy and Petite, and then also looking ahead to 2026 and all the fun that lays ahead. But I love that you're in studio, but you're in town for the best thing, a racing family reunion. What do you got going on?
Yeah, so Morgan Brady, he texted us all last week. Obviously, big part of my career in America was coming over with Core Autosport. In the very beginning, I did my first ever race in 2014, was actually Daytona, but then later in the year I did Petit Le Mans. So he's getting everyone back from the core group together tonight, which is going to be really nice. See a lot of the folks still in the paddock. We've all sort of disbanded in different teams, but it's going to be nice to get the old band back together and tell a few war stories of the past, and then probably what we're doing now as well. So looking forward to that.
And it's such a great group, the Core Autosport folks were. And when you go back and you look at unique stories, the fact that it all came together because owner John Bennett was at the gym and he looked over and he saw this guy on a treadmill and he had a Formula One shirt on. And so they struck up a conversation and he said, all right, I want to start a race team. Here's my business card. And of course, like in racing, Morgan goes, yeah, right, whatever. John called in the next day and he's like, look, man, I'm serious. Let's do it. And then that's how the wheels were in motion. And you look at how that changed so many lives. Like you said, you mentioned you, but there's so many others like Travis, and crew guys throughout the entire paddock that they got opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that was a whole fantastic team, and it was really like a big traveling family. Even like Tim was my crew chief then when I was driving the Corvette last year. Irish, he's, went on to race in the Porsche, but going to end up like hooking back up with him, doing a bit of stuff next year as well. So, it's such a small world and small community. It's really fantastic. So that's why I said we're probably all going to look forward to getting the band back together a little bit there. Like I said, we see each other in other teams. There's a lot of guys over at Ford and Multimatic there as well. All the car guys. And if that team was just a great family environment. Like I remember one time, God, I lumped up one of those RSRs at Lime Rock in the last corner, and I felt really bad about it. The next race I come, and there's just this giant jar of carbon and dirt and brass on my desk when I arrive, and they're like, thank you. And it was just all the crap that they'd managed to pull out of the car. But it was a fun family group of people, if you know what I mean. We would all win and lose together.
Well, when you look at the four horsemen, so to speak, the regular season drivers, you had Nick and Patrick, you and Larry. Who was the one, not say the troublemaker, but the one that liked to have the most fun at others' expense?
Probably Lawrence. I mean, he had a lot of fun at my expense. I think there's probably also a really famous one where we were in mid-Ohio, and we had this.
He mentioned this one.
Yeah, and we had a bus there, and he said, "Oh, look, I've got my car stuck," and we were trying to get out, and we were pushing it back and forth, and eventually I said, "Well, I'll push from the back," and I was pushing this thing. And then all of a sudden it started to get traction, and I thought he was going to back off the gas and be fine. Well, he just like stayed buried in it. And then the car just turned a little bit, and I just got absolutely sprayed with mud. It cost him a bomb to fix the RV as well, because it showered that with mud as well. So, we just had a lot of fun times like that, like the whole group and the whole crew of people.
When you look at just the eclectic group that's there, was there one guy that was more of a beer and wings, beer and pizza kind of guy of the four of you that loved
Nick
you guys?
Tandy.
Really?
I think Nick just lived on beer and boneless wings. But like I said, it was a good, fun crowd, and we always got on well together with the team and the crew, and I think for me it set me up with good fundamentals for sort of what we do today, and what we've got now at Action Express with Jack and Fred, myself, Peter, the whole team there. It's again like a big traveling family, and it's just really good, fun time to go racing. And when you enjoy what you do going racing, normally you drive pretty good too. So like I'm a pretty big believer in that. So yeah, it makes it special when you have those sorts of relationships.
You hear nicknames throughout the different disciplines in racing, and there's not many that just like, wow, that is badass. But when you hear Bamthor, how did that come about? Who came up with that nickname for you and Lawrence?
Actually, it was a fan. Like some random fan on X,
really,
back in the day, tweeted like #Bamthor, and then like more and more people just started picking up on it. And then Lawrence one day was like, "Hey, let's just run with this." And then, do you remember the T-shirts that we used to do?
Oh yeah.
So then from that we started the whole T-shirt thing, right? And we just went with it, and we didn't really ask for permission to do it.
Now, this is when you had the Coca-Cola livery.
No. So before that, we did the Brumos, we did those, and we never asked permission. And then in the very last one, we were like, right, let's do this Coca-Cola thing. And I remember like really clearly, we made up these wicked T-shirts and caps. I've still got a bunch of them. I'm
extra large, by the way.
Okay,
just so you know,
okay.
Christmas is coming up.
Yeah, there's a contraband box somewhere around of them. And they look really good. And I remember my boss at the time, he found out about that, done this, and they were like, guys, you can't do that with Coca-Cola and stuff like that. Like they gave them a big trademarking book, and I think it broke like every single rule inside there. And I was like, oh, okay. So they called me first, and Lawrence was very unreasonable about it, right? So they called me and said, oh, we can't do this. And I said, okay. And then I said, let's play a joke on him though, right? So he knew he wasn't allowed to do it, but he'd still made them all, and he had them in the truck. And we were doing some hot laps with all the executives from Coca-Cola, and we happened to have the chief legal and marketing guy there.
From Coca-Cola?
From Coca-Cola. So what we did was we arranged it that we lined a meeting up in the back of the truck and got Lawrence to come in, and they said, oh, Mr. Bamthor, we understand that you have made these T-shirts and stuff like that, and then gave him like a notice letter.
Like a cease and desist?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
and just to see his face drop down was just absolutely gold for quite a few months. And then like no one in the room could keep a straight face, and everyone just burst out laughing. But yeah, he got me a lot of times, but I managed to get him quite good at that time.
And when you look at your relationship, it's those things where I think it's special in sports car racing, because in single seaters or stock car racing, it's a driver to a car and a team, and you might be corporate teammates, but you still don't have that, I think, specialness that you get with sports car racing, because you've got 2 or 3 guys that share a car, and it's a special relationship, I think, and you create, epic memories that others might not have an opportunity just because it's IMSA WeatherTech Racing and it's set up with that kind of a format.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's completely different, and you really in sports car racing, you win and lose together as a total team, not just driving wise, but also like crew, strategy, and then your teammate. And I think when you have a teammate, you need someone that sort of like complements yourself as a driver, someone that's good at things that you're not good at, essentially. And then you have something really strong, because then it doesn't really matter which one of you does what they need to do. You complement each other all the time. So I think that's what we have really good at the moment, is that it doesn't really matter who is there to drive for us at the moment. Like Indy, I said to myself, I said, look, I'm not having a great day in this thing. Jack, you finish. And he did an amazing job on the fuel. At Petit, Jack got quite dehydrated in the car and was like, look, I can't do the end. Can you do the end for me? So when you can have that honest relationship with another driver that you're sharing the car with, that's where the strength comes in sports car racing, rather than, 2 individuals trying to win a race. You got to be together in it, and we're athletes. Like, I think there's too often and not that everyone just expects that a driver will be perfect all the time. And, we're still human. You're still going to have a good day behind the wheel and you're going to have a bad day. And if you can't admit that, then I think you're sort of maybe kidding yourself. So when you can have those relationships with your teammates, I think that's what makes sports car racing kind of special. And, when we looked at the 24 as well, like that's a brutal exercise that we're going to go through. And then we're going to have a sprint race at the end, like it is every year. So, when you can have that mix up of it doesn't matter which one of you is going to do the end, that sort of plays a lot of strength, because I know a lot of teams have to really focus and try and time which one they want at the end of the race.
So much is put the phrase race shape. He's in great race shape. His body's acclimated to the G's and everything else, the heat, you name it. When you look at where you are, mid-30s, what's your workout program? And is that different from Jack and Fred? Because I've seen pictures of Jack and Fred cycling because they live so close to each other in the UK.
I don't like bike riding. I did a little bit of bike riding with Lawrence and I fell off a few times. And yeah, I'm not going to get into our bike wrecking. So I do a lot of running. I like that. That's sort of my thing. I know Fred's done a good 5K time and I'm out to try and beat him on that. I tried to do it in Japan and I think I did it, but then it didn't record. So I was very mad about that. But no, and to be honest, that us as a group, we do a lot of training together. I have my own physio, Leo, that comes along as well. That sort of helps. Probably like the eating and the sleeping is a really big thing. And, I've seen this progression of the sport where, came over here 10 years ago and that wasn't really a thing. And now we've got, a lot more physios, a lot more trainers, a lot more people looking into all that stuff.
It's almost like if you're not doing that,
exactly,
you're already a lap behind.
Exactly. And also just like keeping yourself, fueled and hydrated for when you do those like triple, quadruple stints in the night, you've got to keep putting energy food in. So that's why like I do a gel at the pit stops and stuff like that. So there's just, as the sport's becoming more and more professional and refined, like, the pit lane structures are getting bigger and...
they're like condominiums.
Yeah, they're like condominiums. The same in the driver's seat, it's getting more and more refined. It's actually harder and harder to find those little gains now as well. Like, you're not gaining a second or two on pit entry. Like everyone's pretty refined and nailed. We're doing a lot more simulation work than we ever have before as well. That's such a big tool in our sport now. And like I said, that's just allowing all the drivers and everything to grab all the low-hanging fruit. And it's great. It's fun competitiveness, but it's just interesting how the sport's changed so much as well.
When you look at 2025, I thought, like everybody, I thought Watkins Glen was going to be the big win to really get the momentum rolling. And very, very close. To survive at one point the jack post, you couldn't have done it a million times if you tried. It went right into the expansion crack in the pit box. So you had a slow pit stop at one point, but to recover and then be so close, everyone's like, oh my gosh, just the emotion of it's going to be, and then, oh.
Yeah. That one sucked. I think that one sucked for everyone in the team. But we had a fantastic car there. And to be honest, we got back there and the guys did a great strategy play to put us at the front with a clear air. And we looked at it and it was a hard one to take, but, we just kept chipping away and digging. And, the last two races, I forget who said it, but they put it really well. They said, if we keep knocking on the door's going to eventually have to open for us, because that's what we had been doing. We'd been knocking on the door at Watkins Glen. We were there in Daytona as well. We were around there in Sebring. And eventually we said, look, the door's going to have to open. And then all of a sudden Indy happened, Petit happened. And, I think it just shows that we're fighting around there. And then, Jack to finish second in the championship was also, pretty good considering what we had at the beginning of the year. And I think a big thing for us now in 2026 is that the team's just staying the same. Everyone on the timing stand, everyone in the cockpit. So, that's going to be something really important that we hope we can just keep building that momentum. But I guess now we've got to keep working even harder because everyone's looking at what we were doing, right? But, I sort of felt that Petit was a really good race because no matter what sort of the race threw at us, whether it was like really big fuel save, pure pace, getting a puncture, coming back through, we could sort of manage each scenario because we'd probably had every scenario throughout the year and we all knew how to handle it. If when one scenario changed, we were directly onto the next thing. So that was probably something pretty cool to see as an overall team. I feel the Action Express guys for me at the moment are the best in the lane. Like every single time we do a pit stop, we gain a position. And, for a driver, that's so cool, right? Whenever you come in the lane, that you're just gaining time as well. So it's a big hats off to those people too.
I think it says a lot when you look at an organization and there's not a lot of change. And it's the same people year after year. Billy, the crew chief, he's been going over the wall. He and Gary Nelson are the two original employees still there. And when people come in, they don't leave. And I think that says a lot about the family. Very efficient, and they execute, perfectly. And it's like you mentioned, it's one of those old school type racer groups.
Yeah, no, and that's what's really cool about it. It's just there's nothing fancy, but there's everything that you need as a driver to do your job to the best level. And like I said, the pit crew guys, they're amazing. Like if you just ask for anything small, hey, change this in the cockpit, change this, it'll just be done the next race without question. And all the cars that we have, that's pretty rare that all those little details and all those little things get picked up, by the guys. And yeah, I think they've got something really special going on. Ian's doing a great job on the timing stand. We've got a really quick Cadillac at the moment as well. And I think it's going to be interesting to see with everyone with the new aero kits as well. That's going to be a bit of a reset for everyone as well. So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how we shape out at Daytona. But we had not a bad test down there.
When you talk to different teams and there's so many updates, all the different teams with updates, you're carrying over the momentum, the Indy and then Petit Le Mans win, going into the test. Everyone, you don't know who is trying their best or who maybe is sandbagging a little bit, because you always see a little bit of that. But with the momentum that you have, pretty confident that you're able to carry that into 26, even with all the unknowns of what the other people, may have the outcome with their updates.
I mean, you don't know, right? But that's motor racing. And, we've worked pretty hard at what we've done. I think that aero kit's been in sim for a long, long time. We've done a lot of kilometers in the sim with that. And, for me as a driver to do that work in the sim and then see it come to life in the paddock is really cool. And, Daytona was pretty interesting. Everyone was taking photos of all their new stuff and each other's stuff. But, at the end of the day, it's all built to a set of rules and regulations. And we've seen how close IMSA racing is recently. So it's going to be close when we go down there, like everything. I don't think there'll be anyone with a real clear advantage. I think the whole process that everyone goes through now is pretty amazing. Like I said, I think when I came into sports car racing, BOP was this new thing, and over all the years, people have played tricks with it and stuff like that, but over the years the knowledge is becoming tighter and tighter and tighter, and again, no one ends up with a big advantage anymore. It's all about execution of the race. And when you go to Daytona, everyone was like, oh, we don't push for until the last 2 hours. Now it's hour 18, maybe hour 16, when the whole thing starts winding up and the cars become more reliable, there's less yellows because the drivers are doing a better job, the interaction on track, everything like that. The race starts earlier and earlier and earlier, which is also really cool to see. I mean, Petit was a great race with how green the end of the race was. And I think that's what the fans like to see, is when it's green, you see the strategies play out, all that stuff. It's fascinating.
I mean, it's almost like a qualifying pace throughout the whole race now.
Yeah, no, exactly. These cars can go flat out for 24 hours and, you used to sort of wait for that yellow. And like I said, those yellows become less and less and less, and you want to be at the front earlier and earlier in the race. So that's why the race is changing. It's changing face. You never know what it's going to do. Le Mans very similar, right? Now you've just got to go from lap one, whether there's no sort of chance to make time back up. You're always losing time no matter what.
So it's an iconic color scheme, legendary name, Whelen on the Cadillac. But at the season finale, we started talking about your off season, and you went to the smallest track you probably have ever been on, except for maybe, the mall parking lot. And you were behind the wheel of a Whelen Mazda MX-5 Cup car, a two-time Le Mans winner, WEC champion, IMSA champion, you name it. And then you're there with a bunch of younger people that I'm sure you can conjure up images from when you started. What was it like to be back behind the wheel of something like that with so much, total joy from the competitors and a place you'd never even been to.
To be honest, it was really, really cool. I mean, I have to say a huge thanks to, Whelen and Sonny for making that happen because, when I was a kid, I came over here many, many, many years ago. It must have been 2007. It was the year Harvick won the Daytona 500 with Richard. And, he invited me around and I went around some small short track oval racing. I went to Bristol. It was the last year that Bristol had the proper,
the real
Bristol.
The real 36 degrees.
Exactly. And that was amazing to see. And then actually like many, many years, that same year, he let me have a go in like a Legends car with Ty at Lanier. So I've actually driven Lanier for a day. And I've always wanted to try an oval.
Which for folks that don't know, if you happen to do an aerial of Road Atlanta, it's the little bull ring right across the street.
Yeah, exactly. And that thing was so cool to drive. So I always wanted to try it. And then, they started coming out with this deal of Martinsville. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. I think that'll be awesome. And so we went down to, what's it called now? The one next to Daytona, the small oval, Smyrna. New Smyrna. So I went down to New Smyrna and did a test in this MX-5. And
the Fliss brothers take you out there. Were they a part of that?
The Fliss and then the Hendricks guys. Yep. So, I mean, such a cool little team. And then we had Gary. Gary came down and supervised the test.
Of course he did.
Yep, exactly. So, he was telling me all the sort of do's and don'ts of oval racing, which was really, really helpful. And, then going to Martinsville, that's a place. I didn't realize it's got some banking. Because when you watch it on TV, I watched the race.
It looks flat.
It looks flat. And I walked in there and I'm like, damn, this thing's got banking. Just doing that whole event was amazing. Super, super cool. Everyone at Mazda was amazing. The team, Whelen, qualified okay. And then I was racing. I got to third in stage one. I was like, this is not too bad. This is really fun. And then I got tore up. But, yeah, I mean, amazing experience. I suggest for a lot of people to give it a try. Like I had a lot of other drivers reach out about, man, that's so cool. You're doing that race and stuff like that. And they're awesome little cars to drive. I think they teach drivers, a lot of good habits, a lot of good traits. Connor came from there. A lot of other good drivers have come from there as well. So I think it's just a great little series. And, I loved every minute of it. I'd like to try another car on an oval. Because it's just such an interesting discipline. And I find I've done probably a lot of different disciplines, like a bit of sports car racing. I've done some V8 supercars and NASCAR racing. Every single discipline of our sport focuses on different areas of performance to gain stuff out of. So it's always fascinating when you go to those different little series or different series to find out what they're doing and then bring it back to what we do because there's always something to learn.
When you talk about the Whelen family, they do so much with the Michael J. Fox Foundation throughout the year, whether it's a golf tournament, but there was also a special race weekend with almost 100 drivers showed up and, raising money for the Racing for a Cure. And if folks want to also jump on, it's racingforacure.giving in support of the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Fun was had by everybody. When you look at the pictures in the video, you can see it's one of those epic days where you just, got to experience it. And it's what makes the racing fraternity and the camaraderie. When you have a great cause like that, people all want to jump in.
Yeah, that was a fantastic day, I have to say. And, just to see everyone from Whelen there, everyone that works, back at the factory as well, all the different drivers that Whelen support throughout the racing world, whether it be NASCAR, the Whelen Modifieds, Mazda Racing, our thing, we were all there. And it was a great day. I raced with my boss, Keeley, and then also our lead of engine guy, Sean, and they were so competitive with the whole thing. We had a race strategy planned out and this whole thing. And it was a really, really good fun day. And, really good hard racing for 4 hours as well. It was tough and challenging, but just also for a great cause. To get that out there. A lot of local media that came out as well. So yeah, it was a really, really cool event. I think if any driver wants to do it, I would highly recommend doing it. It's a great day out.
When you get drivers involved and corporate folks as well, all of a sudden it's for a great cause, but now also there's some bragging rights on the line.
Oh, yeah. I mean, trust me, it was competitive. People were weighing in. They were trying to work out strategy. All sorts of stuff was going, like just the normal racing stuff that goes on, like who's got the quick cart. You have to swap carts halfway through. So then trying to pick one that's fast or slow and stuff like that. So, it's racing, right? So it's for a good cause. And then everyone starts to get super competitive about it right at the end.
Does moments like that, driving the Whelen Mazda MX-5 Cup car, when you have situations like that, does it ever take you back to when you first started racing because it's more of a grassroots feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's good fun racing, but I always say to everyone as well, like what we do at the top level, if you strip back all the fancy walling and all the fancy stuff around, it's still the same thing as that grassroots racing. You still got, your crew chief and your guys building a car for you. You still got your race engineer and you got yourself. And the cars are really complicated these days, but they've still got 2 pedals and a steering wheel at the end of the day in principle, right? So it doesn't really matter what you do. It's the same sort of principle in general of what you're trying to do is make something go as fast as you can around the track. But it's just great to see. It's great to see the level of talent as well. Like there's so many people that are very, very talented that never make it through to the top level of racing. So I also say when you jump back into something that you think is grassroots, you better be aware that someone's probably going to kick your ass as well because they know those cars so well and stuff like that. So, there's just a lot of very talented people everywhere out there driving.
So a couple of years ago, Jeff Gordon went to Indy and ran a Porsche Carrera Cup car. And he thought, hey, I'm going to go here. I'm Super G, NASCAR's all-time road course king. And, he talked to some of the young kids and like, hey, if you need any pointers, no, man, I'm good. And he got laid out by them. He finished, I think, 22nd or so. The next morning, he went and found all the young kids to get all the advice he could. And he says, wow, he goes, it's amazing how much talent, is involved in those Porsche Carrera Cup races. And it's a great vision into the future of what the future of racing could look like because it's in so many great young kids' hands.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I have a Porsche Carrera Cup team and sometimes they ask me, hey, do you want to go test one of the race cars? And I'm like, nope, absolutely no way. Like, you guys do your own thing because, they're so specialist. And I just see what we do now for those kids and at that level of racing compared to what I did when I came through. And it's a different world on, the level of detail that we go into the cars, the coaching, all of that stuff is sort of near to the level of what we do in the top stuff. So, then their wealth of knowledge from a young age is going to turn into something really different when they get up to what we're doing in 10 years' time as well. So that whole evolution is, never, ever going to stop, and if you look at even just a GTD team, you'd say, okay, it's entry-level GTD team. Well, what they have now trackside is probably what we had as a factory team 10 years ago, and then what we have is in the factory teams is just another level. But it's fantastic to see that level of detail and how the sport's just progressing so quickly. And it's really, really cool to see.
Well, when you look at your Whelen engineering team at Action Express and Cadillac Racing, and then you look to your ownership. Now, how many cars do you have? What's your ownership platform like? Because I'm told that you are amazing. You do so much stuff in 24 hours that it would take somebody else 48 because you're just such a multitasker.
How many cars do we have? We have like 15 or 20. I don't own them all, but no, we run, like most of it's Carrera Cup racing, so that's quite simple. Actually, this weekend they're running Asian Le Mans at the moment. But no, it's really interesting, but it's something that I wanted to learn and play with. And it's something that I know since a kid, so it's probably the only other thing that I'd know how to do business-wise. It's also helped me quite a bit as a driver too, ironically. Because you sort of know when to push on things, right? As a driver, everything seems really, really easy. You say, oh, why can't I have this right now? Why can't I have that right now? And you sort of, when you can see the mechanics and they're under a lot of stress and fire at the moment between sessions or during the weekend. And you say, hey, I'm not going to complain about this little thing. Like, I'll deal with that as a driver. It's not a big thing. Or you can say, hey, this really needs to be fixed and I know you should have the time to do it. So, as a driver, it sort of really helped me prioritize that sort of feedback level and stuff like that as well, which has been pretty interesting. But yeah, there's quite a few cars that run around, but I've got a great group of people there behind me that sort of run it and operate it. So I just watch the races now. I can tune in on the intercom if I want, but I've been told that it's better if I stay away.
So when you look at taking your driver's hat off and putting your owner's hat on, any unique moments that you're like, wow, because now you're the owner and you're dealing with drivers?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to deal with drivers. And like I said, it's interesting to do the two. To be honest, the funny one that I had recently was I was at Jota with the Jota folks, and we were talking about Bathurst and Bathurst 12-hour and stuff like that. And then that we won that race. And I had no idea that Jota operated the Aston Martin down there. And I was talking to David, and he was like, yeah, we finished second at Bathurst one year. We got beaten by some team. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's my team. And so that was quite a cool. I mean, that was for me actually like a really special race, which ironically we only did that race thanks to myself and Lawrence, because many years ago both me and him wanted to race Bathurst 12-hour. So we went to the folks at Porsche and we're like, hey, me and Lawrence want to do Bathurst. There's the budget that we need. I think we've got a team and blah, blah, blah. And then the Porsche guys were like, no, we don't have any budget for you to do it. And we were like, okay, whatever. And then they looked at me and said, oh, you have a race team. Do you want to run a car for us? And at the time I was like, no, I don't have a race team. We run like 1 or 2 Cup cars. I don't have a race team. And they're like, no, you'll have a race team now. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yes, I've got a race team. Yes.
And I'm like, is that the right answer? Okay. Yep. So yeah, then
they're like, we're trying to give you the signal.
Exactly, but I didn't quite get it in the beginning, and then so we air freighted. Mantai helped us prepare the cars, and we brought the team down there, and we were actually running 1-2 until we had a failure on one of the cars. But yeah, that was a crazy cool day. That was probably one of the more special ones as a team owner, and then obviously to win our first championship. Now we've won like 13 or 14 of them, so. And then probably another big passion project for me is to do a scholarship for young drivers out of New Zealand. So Richard Giltrap, who's been a long supporter of my career since I was, I worked out more than 20 years, because actually they rebuilt one of the A1 GP cars, and they shook it down yesterday, and we were just talking about it, and they were like, yeah, it hasn't run in 20 years. And I'm like, oh my God, has it been 20 years already since that? But yeah, we started a scholarship. So we've done, quite a few drivers and taken them through in their early career. So, Matt Payne was our first one who drives V8 supercars. Callum Hedge, who was in Indy Next. I think he's trying to make the move over to IMSA. And then Brian Wood as well, who's also another V8 supercar driver. So we're all pretty proud of that little project as well. Giving the platform to young drivers to have a place to aspire to, and then move through to become professional drivers.
With that Kiwi culture, it just seems like from the outside that it's very special, and there's so much history through all the different decades. And doing the scholarship, is that sort of your way of paying it forward because you were helped out when you were young?
Yeah, no, exactly. We sort of had that conversation a few years ago, and we said, look, we've got to try find a platform for these kids to have a place to go, but also a place when you're a karting kid. Like when I grew up, there was the A1GP car. That's where you wanted to aspire to go. As a Kiwi, that's where you wanted to go. And that's what we're sort of trying to recreate with that as a known place that you could go and make your way through racing, and then have a meanings to the end for the parents, so that they stop paying for it all as well. Because that's a big reality of what we do. So that's why it's sort of quite a good passion project. And, we get the kids, quite a few of them, through into professional racing, and then we're happy. So it doesn't matter where they go after that, but we're happy to see them winning races or winning championships and stuff like that at the end, because like I said with the previous point, there's so many other talented kids that never get that chance and opportunity. So if we can give it to a couple, try and make their way through, something good.
With your body of work and all the experiences you've had through all the different years, is it tougher now when you see kids trying to get involved in racing, maybe on the driving side? Because I know that there's so many STEM opportunities for folks that want to be an engineer or, be a mechanic or what have you. But as far as driving, is it easier now or harder now because of the tools and the opportunities that might be out there or might not be out there, especially when you look at the costs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cost is a big thing. That's always the hardest thing in motor racing. But then, if you look at the amount of motor racing out there now as well, though, there's probably a lot more opportunity as well. I just look at, you could look at IMSA as a great example. I remember we did the first Daytona, and I think there was a merger year when I first did it, and it wasn't a full grid. Now, I mean, you don't talk about just Daytona full. You can't even get a full season entry if you tried, probably for years. And then on the back of that, then we've got Pilot Challenge full, Carrera Cup full, Lamborghini full, Mazda full. So you just look at that paddock, it's just crazy. And then we've got sold out races all over the place as well. So just the amount of motor racing is just actually increased. So there's more opportunity as well in that. And then like the driver market for silvers and stuff like that is quite competitive, and some of those guys get free rides or they get paid and stuff like that. So I would say there's probably more opportunity on that side. But then to do the grassroots, those first couple years, F4 or your Carrera Cup and stuff like that, that's quite tough. So it's give or take. It's never easy, I don't think. But I think it's great to see how much enthusiasm there is in the world for our sport all around the place. A lot of people are getting into it. A lot of people love driving. Even go-karting is crazy professional now as well. So, just the whole thing's moving on very, very quickly.
Were you blown away by the crowd at Petit Le Mans?
Oh, that was just insane, that crowd. I mean, for the fact that we all get stuck in a traffic jam for an hour just trying to get into the track. I mean, we went very early and we found some back road. I believe Matt Campbell had to run in, right? He was near.
And Jam, they were cutting it close.
I could see that from both of them as well. But no, that's what I mean, is that's the strength of our sport. And, I get some friends that say, hey, can I come over to Petit, or can I come over to Daytona, get a parking pass or a ticket? I'm like, no, you can't. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, it's sold out like months ago. So, to see that, to see the amount of passion, we actually had a funny one on the grid. So we're all lined up, and this couple were in a wedding dress on the grid of Petit leaving.
Oh, them.
Yeah, and we were like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we're doing our wedding photos. We're going to get married here. So we said to them, we were like, well, do you want to stay for the anthem? Just line up with us. And, some of the security were like, oh, and we were like, no, just let them stay. They'll be fine. And, we did that. And I think it was a special moment because they had their photographer. They stood with us just before the race. And then I said to the groom, I said, man, how did you get this past your wife? And he said, actually, this is my wife's idea. It's not mine. So, I mean, it's just cool to see that fan base. And like, you see also that like young generation coming through. So, I met a fan that his son now must be like 18. And he showed me a photo of when he was like 8 years old with me and Lawrence outside the ice cream shop at Road America.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, wow, that's cool to see that whole generation still coming to the races. Yep. I believe it was at Petit, for the fact that people stay more or less lifetime fans of it.
So we have something in common, that we both started out growing up out in the country, so to speak, but that's where my driving career ended, on our 10 acres. But for you, how did your career start? Go-karts, the family car, rooting up the property. How did it happen?
Yeah, we started driving around the property on wet grass, basically.
How old were you?
3.
Wow.
Sat on Dad's knee and drove at 3 years old. I drove to town when I was 5.
On the lap of somebody?
Yep. Mum didn't appreciate that. So, yeah, that's what we did. And then eventually she told us that if you want to keep doing that, then you should go go-karting. So, yeah, we went to the local go-kart club, which was about 2 hours away. And then, ironically, Brendan Hartley is from the same go-kart club.
Really?
Yep. So we grew up like go-karting together, more or less. So that's kind of a small world. And then we all just did the go-karting all around the country. Scotty McLaughlin was also a few years behind me, but we raced against each other a few times. So, it's crazy the amount of people that are doing what they do in America now, when we all raced together, back then. So yeah, I did go-karting. I wasn't very good in the beginning, actually. I was terrible.
But you still had the passion to keep going, or your dad pushed you?
No, my dad sat me down one day and said, "Look, you're not very good at this. Do you really want to do this?" And I said, "Yeah, I love doing this." And he's like, "Right, well, can you actually get good at it? Because I'm kind of bored of driving around being at the back." And then I remember one day I walked into a club room and saw a big trophy on the thing, and I said, "Well, I'm going to win that today." And he's like, "Yeah, like how you are. You've never done anything decent in this thing at all." But ended up winning. So, and then, we did all that. And then eventually made the transition into race cars after that. So that's sort of how my stuff started, was on the farm. Actually, Brendan learned how to drive on a gravel road on the farm because he used to come hang out on our farm.
Oh, that's funny. We had a Jeep CJ5 and then later a CJ7. And so I was all over our property with those. And then I'll have to show you the picture sometime. I've got a picture in 1977. I was 10 years old and my mom worked at MIS. And so we took her 1976 green Ford Elite out onto the track, and I actually drove sitting on a pillow. I actually drove it, kind of like David Pierce and Richard Petty style, up by the wall and everything. And someone took a picture. I couldn't believe it, and I still have it. So it's moments like that you probably can't do nowadays.
Oh, no.
Because, insurance, OSHA, the law, everybody. But back then there was so much fun where, like you say, you could drive to town on somebody's lap, and nobody really cared.
I mean, also because from our front gate down to the letterbox is 8 Ks on gravel. So we used to go up and down there a lot. And we also got stuck many times because, Dad would drive too quick and then we'd get stuck and have to walk home and get the tractor and pull ourselves out. So there was a lot of that. It was fun. I mean, you could never, ever do that these days. But I think a lot of people learn how to drive doing that sort of stuff. And it's just cognitive motor skills as a kid, learning the feeling of a car, basically.
When you look back through your career, what was the one moment where you're like, you know what, had this not happened or this phone call wasn't placed, that's where it might have ended? Was there a moment that was like the breakthrough opportunity phone call?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few of those, to be honest. Yeah, racing's just a fascinating one. You just never know what's gonna happen next, if you know what I mean. But I was doing Carrera Cup, and I had to win the scholarship to get through. So I managed to win the scholarship and get picked up as a Porsche junior driver. And I remember that year I was like, right, well, I need to win the Porsche Super Cup, otherwise never going to go to the next step. So that was a really, really important year, if you know what I mean. And I still remember like getting called up for my first factory race at Petit. That was a special moment. Probably the most interesting phone call that I really vividly remember, though, was we'd been doing the 919 testing at the end of 24, and we did the Daytona race here, and then we crashed into each other with me driving one of them. And I got a phone call from Frank Valazar, and I was at Orlando Airport, right? And I remember I was like, oh, God, okay, well, he's calling me to fire me, right? Like, this can't be good after the race. And he said, oh, you need to get your notebook out and write this down, right? And I was like, okay, yeah, what's going on? And he just said, oh, write down the date, like this date for Le Mans, because you're going to drive the 919 there.
Wow.
So I remember sitting in Orlando Airport on the ground writing that down, or like, you don't know what was going to happen in that conversation. So, yeah, that was probably a very special phone call.
I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray.
No.
Okay.
Should I?
You should, because it's got a lot of coolness at different levels. But Bill Murray, he relives the same day over and over and over. And by the way, you're not alone, because a lot of your friends from across the pond, New Zealand, Australia, you name it, they haven't watched it either. But then some have, which surprises you. But Bill Murray relives the same day over and over again. And his day continues to get better until one day it's like the perfect day. But if you had a chance with all the different races and the experiences that you've had, and you could go back, is there one race that you'd love to relive like it was the first time because of whether the excitement that you had or a moment in the race that was special?
I'd like to read. You'd always like to relive your first Le Mans win. That's a pretty special day. To be honest, if I were to rewind a race, I'd probably want to rewind the race at Macau when Lawrence flipped and he still won. Yeah, that was a tough one. But to be honest, a really cool race. But sometimes people look and you say like, okay, well, would you change anything or do you regret it? And I tell people no, because at the end of the day, you have some hard races. We make mistakes, we lose races, we win races, but each one builds you up to the driver that you are now. So I wouldn't really want to change them, honestly speaking.
It's all the experiences and the maturity and the learning process as you go from event to event, year to year, series to series. It's always the phrase, never looking in the mirror, always looking what's next up, is what you always hear in auto racing, and it's the Rolex 24. You've been so close. A pair of wins at Le Mans, championships. Is that the event that would really, encompass your entire career if you could put a check mark next to that?
Yeah, it's the only one. I think I know I've won every other race. So that's sort of for me, the big checkbox to try and get that one. I've been close many times, so I love Daytona, but I hate Daytona for that, if you know what I mean. I've led into the last hour and, people come by on the straight and stuff like that. But hey, if it was easy, then everyone would do it. So, I think we've got a really good team this year as well. So we'll go down there and give it our best shot. But I'll just keep hanging around until I win that thing overall. I don't know. I've been doing it for, 10, 12 years already, and not yet, but it'll come one day.
When you look at whether it's in sports car racing or in NASCAR, Daytona is so special. And the older you get and you still have a 0 in the win column, does it put more pressure on you because you've got a certain window to try to pull that off? Or are you able, because of everything that you've experienced, you're able to compartmentalize the stress of it?
Sometimes it's your day, right? So, some days, you try to do everything right and nothing goes right. And some days you can do everything wrong and it still goes right. So, sometimes it's your day. It hasn't been my day yet at Daytona. So, maybe it'll come around. Maybe it'll take some more years. I think the Le Mans a hard one because there's some people that have never, ever won Le Mans. And they're still trying. And I managed to get one on my first. So, I always say those races sometimes choose you. So, I've been really lucky on one side of the pond, maybe unlucky, not so lucky on this side. But, at the end of the day, to be able to do those races, to finish on podiums, some people never even get the chance to get in the race. So at the same time, you can say it's tough, but, we're doing what everyone dreams to do, right?
So when you started out on your dad's knee, driving at 3, the single digits, now what year do you get your driver's license down in New Zealand?
I think it's 16.
So what was your first car that you were licensed to drive on the road?
My first ever car was a Toyota Corolla wagon because...
you were a chick magnet.
No, I hadn't even finished yet, right? It got even better because I was racing the Toyota Racing Series, so they decided to brand it as well with my face on the side of it. So it was really cool. And also I remember clear as day, I did my first driving test, right? And being a driver, it's quite easy to drive, right? But to pass the road rules is sometimes more difficult than what you think, right? So I get in this thing and I'm like, okay, I've got to be on my best behavior, like looking in the mirrors, everything like that. And one of the instructors was also a Motorsport New Zealand steward, right? And I remember I like reverse out of the parking lot, I've made sure I have my seatbelts on, everything's good.
It didn't have your face on the side or anything, did it?
Yeah, it still did. Right.
So you're taking your driver's test with a Toyota branded with Earl Bamber.
Yeah. So I get to the bottom of the car parking lot and go to turn left. And as soon as I turn left, he goes, "No, you need to stop on the side of the road." And I'm like, "Are you serious? I've failed already? Like, what did I do?" Right? And he looked down and he goes like, yeah, in the road code, you're not allowed to use your left foot to brake. You have to only use your right foot. But he's like, I know you wouldn't know that, and it's from racing, so like I'll let you off. But for the rest of the test, can you just use your right foot to brake for me, please?
Oh, that's funny.
But I still passed, just. But yeah, that was funny.
That's awesome. Well, we could talk for a whole nother hour with so many incredible stories. And Earl, we appreciate you stopping by. Have fun at the Core Autosport reunion.
Thank you.
With all the boys, and look forward to seeing you at Daytona, the Rolex 24. And like you said, maybe this year the race will pick you and your mates at Action Express.
Fingers crossed. We're all dealt a win there for a few years. So, like I said, we've all been pretty close. But I think we've got the machinery and the crew to do it. So, thank you.
Awesome. Happy holidays. We'll see you in Daytona. Earl Bamber, what a great year they had in 2025. Back-to-back wins to close it out. Tons of momentum. They're hoping to carry that back to the beach in January. So no matter the discipline in auto racing, there are race car drivers, and then there are the special ones, the racers, the true wheelmen and women. And when you look at broadcasting, the same categories apply. You know, I'm bragging a little bit early on our final guest of 2025, but our NBC Sports teammate and analyst, Calvin Fish, and he's a guy that I respect so much. His work ethic is beyond top shelf, and it shows also when you throw in his great blend of energy, but also entertainment. Calvin, welcome to the final episode. Appreciate you being in the studio.
It's great to be here. I've listened to the podcast this season. It's been a wonderful ride, lots of exciting stories, some great personalities, and you're doing a great job bringing a new audience to IMSA, which is fantastic.
Well, I appreciate those compliments, and I've followed you before we started working together, and I love the energy. I love the Calvin, show. And everything that you bring. But the number one thing I've got to ask you, RG Bargy, where did it come from and when did you first use it?
Oh, I've probably used it for a decade now. A lot of drivers liked it. There was some management with a certain series who didn't like it. And so I kind of eased off on it for a little bit, but it's kind of become a bit of a moniker for me. But it's a real word. It's a heated discussion, an argument. And that's what we see on the racetrack typically in all of the IMSA races with a little bit of argy-bargy. And certainly that was cleaned up as we saw halfway through the season. Bill Barfield and the boys in race control thought there was too much argy-bargy. And I think at the end of the day, it made for much better racing at the end of 2025 and looking forward to a 26 season as well.
Well, two short words, but they say so much and they perfectly describe a lot of the fantastic racing, like you mentioned. So before we look through the windshield at what's coming up with 2026, let's look back a little bit in the mirror on 2025. When you look at all of the big stories that transpired from Rolex 24 all the way to the season finale at Petit Le Mans, what do you think was the biggest story in GTP?
Well, I think it's really the season of two halves for the number 7 squad. I mean, to have the start that they had, winning the Rolex again for Penske Motorsport and Porsche, going on a tear, winning at Sebring, winning on the streets of Long Beach, leading at Detroit, finishing runner-up with the Tech Raceway Laguna Seca. They looked almost unbeatable. And then for the last 5 races of the year, one finish inside the top 10, and that was 10th. So that was what was remarkable to me, that a team as experienced as Penske Motorsport, with a manufacturer like Porsche, with drivers like Felipe Nasr and Nick Tandy, how they could let that season unravel. And it was just that seemed like the harder they tried, the worse it got. Nick had that incident at Watkins Glen, which was kind of the highlight, kind of the turning point for them. And from that point forward, with penalties and just being on the wrong side of the line in terms of making some race moves, it just went completely upside down. And obviously there was a bit of a BOP shift as well mid-season at Detroit, in fact, and coming out of their subsequent events, it seemed like Porsche were a bit on the back foot and they struggled to get back in the game. But the 6 squad kind of picked up the mantle. They were the consistency that they needed to just keep picking up points because there's such an advantage over the rest of the field in the points. They just needed that clean run to the end of the season. That's what Jaminet and Campbell obviously did, and that got them the title. But for Nasr and Tandy to not even finish runner-up and got pipped by Jack Aiken there at the end of the day, I think that was the biggest story and remarkable. I haven't really seen anything like it.
You could run top to bottom, and the season was like a heart monitor for just about every title contender. The one constant, start to finish, Daytona to Road Atlanta, was the fans and the incredible turnout. Did it blow you away when it culminated with what we saw at Petit Le Mans, where they had the fire marshal shut it down and drivers, almost missed the start of the race?
It was crazy. I mean, Tanzan Bell, our partner in crime in the booth, he got stuck in traffic and had to be rescued on a golf cart. Matthew Jaminet, ultimately the champion on the day, he had to be rescued, and actually I think he ran the final mile to the track, because it was just, I left a little bit earlier, and I think Brian Till was just half an hour behind me, and he was late, and everyone just got jammed up because the crowd was just immense. And I think with fan engagement like Racing have provided with Rexy and with Spike, there's just a lot of eyeballs on the sport right now. And I think with Petit Le Mans, it's become one of those legendary events that everyone, like Sebring, they pencil it in on their calendar and they're going to show up on race day. And I think it took everyone by surprise. The weather was perfect and the fans came out in droves, and what a great culmination of a 2025 season to see that sea of people on the grid there. The pre-grid at Petit Le Mans is something special.
There's so many things that, no matter the age, and especially if you look at what happened at Petit Le Mans with Halloween weekend, right, so to speak, I think it's raised the bar for other teams to have more fun and even up the fan engagement even more, which is top shelf over any other series.
Yeah, I think that's what's so unique is the fact that from the top, John Doonan and his whole team embraced the fans. Don Panos said that ALMS was all about the fans, obviously with Grand Am and ALMS coming together. They've continued with that trend, and the access is phenomenal, and I think the teams embrace it. I think when you see some of these superstar drivers that we have within our championship, some of whom have come from Formula One, where you really didn't engage with the fans. You basically never touched any fans close up during the course of a race weekend, and now they've embraced that, and I think the fans have certainly appreciated that, and the word is out, and I think we're going to have a fabulous 2026 season. There's so much to look forward to. I think for me, for 2026, having that 6-hour event at Road America, that I see that being our 5th major. I think the fans are really going to embrace. They love coming to Road America. The cars are incredible there, but now to have an endurance race there is going to be a big crowd event as well.
Well, the message boards blew up when IMSA announced the schedule, and they're like, oh my God, we're going to get an endurance race at a proper, sports car facility. It's like old school racing. But when you talk to the different drivers, you mentioned the fans and how they're just so rabid about the sport. But when you talk to drivers, they'll tell you, look, I love coming over from Europe and racing here. I love the IMSA style of racing. What is that, and why are they so excited and jacked up about this form of sports car racing?
I think a lot of it is the tracks. I think the drivers really love the natural road courses that we have here. They're less vanilla, let's say. They have some true character to them. I think also the regulations where, Le Mans is a massive event, right? But if you get behind it, Le Mans, it's really hard to get back in the game. And you're really never out of the game in IMSA. You can be multiple laps down. If there's enough cautions and you play the strategy right, you can get back in the game. I'll never forget that back in 2011 when Chip Ganassi Racing won there. Wayne Taylor Racing, Max Angelelli and the squad there, number 10. I think they were like 11 laps down. And at the end of the race, Chip Ganassi had to pit one car, not the other, to not allow them back onto the lead lap, because that's how the race can play out and you can get back into it. And I think that's why the drivers really love. You've got these long races, but it's never over till it's over. You're always in with a shout. You just got to keep digging and grinding. And if you've got a smart team, you can get back in the game. I think that's what they really love about it.
And you mentioned about the fun factor for that, and then spinning it forward to 2026. I've never seen so many changes with driver lineups, going into a season as we are for 2026.
Yeah, and I think as we spoke about earlier with Penske, you've got to keep moving the needle. You can't sit back and think, oh, this is good enough, because someone else is going to do it a little bit better. So you got to keep tweaking things. Sometimes there's some hard decisions that have to be made where champions aren't back once again on a full-time basis with Penske. We talked about Dane leaving the squad at the end of a championship season in 2024. And I think throughout all four classes, they recognize that the level is now so high. You look at a championship year and you go to the Rolex and you're finishing the year and think, well, it can't get any better. And then you look at the entries gradually coming out here in this off season, which is relatively short, by the way. Teams were testing about a month after the checkered flag at Petit Le Mans, so they already got their new driver lineups, trying to get them established and get them some seat time. Everyone's tweaking it a little bit, whether it's, switching, like Sheldon is now going to drive with Dries in the Dries Vanthoor in the BMW team this year. BMW making that massive decision kind of early on, kind of late summer, where it looked like the writing was on the wall that they would not continue with Bobby Rahal's team, and made the move to WRT. But there's reasons for that. For example, there I feel they saw that synergy where they had their drivers competing in both IMSA and World Endurance Championship, that transfer of knowledge and setups and stuff. And now they feel by having the same team run the car on both championships, that'll be more immediate. There's no filter there. There's no delay. And that's what they feel they need to do to elevate themselves to the next level. So I think that's why you see all these changes, Matt, and certainly other bigger decisions like Dragon Speed ran the Ferrari list. Yeah, they feel that Corvette is a great option for them for 2026.
And going to GTD.
Yes, exactly.
So it doesn't matter what class. I mean, there's a lot of changes, a lot of excitement. And that's what I always love about a new season. It's like a clean sheet of paper.
Right.
And especially with us in our storytelling, it's like, all right, go ahead and drop the green because we're going to have fun, relaying all the different, I mean, really, it's much like a book of the season, different chapters, and all the little bits and pieces that can derail someone's season or be a career year for them.
But the first pages of a book get you hooked, right? And I think that's what's so fun about Daytona is the anticipation of who's going to come out the blocks the strongest, because there's been some big changes. Majority of the GTP cars have new aero for the upcoming season that's been homologated. There's a new tire from Michelin to get used to, which by all accounts is really strong. The tire comes to life a little bit quicker, so the guys can get on the loud pedal a little bit faster rather than warming them up when they get back out there with a fresh set of tires on the car. So lots to look forward to and lots to learn. And we saw at the end of last year teams with a massive amount of momentum, like Action Express winning a couple of races. They'd love to continue that, keep that rolling through the off season. But everyone else who had a poorer season or maybe had a disappointing end to the year, enjoy that reset. Think they can come out fresh and start again. It's like my golf game. It's like if I go home and sleep, maybe tomorrow will be a little bit better. I think some teams are thinking the same thing about their racing.
Next year will be my 30th year of working pit lane for whatever series through the years. And next year will be your 30th year, correct?
Yeah, 96 was my first half a season I did. I did the Watkins Glen 6 hour in 1996 as my first proper sports car race. I did a little bit of broadcasting prior to that, just sort of like a handful of races a year. So, yeah, going on 30 years, it's been a tremendous journey.
See, I love our team, but what I love most when we're not on the air is our family dinners, because everybody brings great stories to the table. And it's much like learning about your teammates. It's like a puzzle, and you'll pick up a piece here or there, and then all of a sudden you can see the picture really, coming to life, so to speak. So what was the first racing puzzle piece for Calvin Fish? What was it that, like, oh my gosh, the car bug, the racing bug, when did it hit and how old were you?
Well, when I was really young, my dad was a used car dealer over in the UK. So he always had, initially it was like a Lotus that he'd bring home, which is the local car manufacturer. I lived in Norfolk over in the UK. So they were the local car manufacturer, and he had a Lotus Elan and then a 2+2. And then he elevated his business a little bit. So he was selling like higher end exotic cars. So it might have been a Ferrari Daytona or a Lamborghini or something. So I always had this passion, like looking at these cars on the desk here right now. And that's what's great about IMSA, is the fact that some of the hottest cars on the street, even though they're in racing trim, compete in the championship. I always had this passion for cars. And then my parents bought me a small, fun go-kart as a Christmas gift one year, and I used to just play around on it. And then ultimately, my mum and dad separated, and the racing that we'd gotten into was a great way for my dad and I to get together a couple of weekends a year. He'd moved to a different part of the country down in the southwest. I continued to live with my mum up in Norfolk, in the east side of the country. And on the weekend, my uncle would drive me down to London, and we'd meet my dad, and we'd go racing at a couple of the big tracks down in London. So that was kind of how it came together. And I never really thought it was going to be a career, but as I got more into it, got a little bit better, got some attention, and then moved from the 100cc sprint karts up into 250cc superkarts and the shifter karts. And at that point, they were getting a lot of attention because we ran on the big tracks like Silverstone and Donington and tracks like that over in the UK. And suddenly it all just started to gel. It suddenly became a career. And I ran with what was really the only quasi-factory team, Zip Karts. Martin Hines was kind of the pioneer of karting over in the UK and globally. And one of the big competitors was a Danish kart manufacturer, Dino. And the importer for that said, well, if you come and drive our kart, we'll give you money to break into car racing. So it was just that journey, just from little acorns, we suddenly grew into this tree of going racing in a major way. And yeah, I just didn't really ever see it becoming that. And obviously, I've now been involved in racing for 50 years. So it's incredible that it's stayed this long.
When you talk to Tony Kanaan, you talk to Jan Whelen, the list goes on, Jensen Button, they'll all talk about around this stage of their careers when they were karting. Everybody had a team van, and you would pile into it. And that's how, some people learn English as another language, but they learned about life. They had a lot of fun. Did you have a quote unquote unique team van?
We had a team van. The problem for me was back in the day, back when I was like a sort of 17, 18-year-old, I used to drive like a lunatic on the road. But my road vehicle was the van that we took the karting in, which had my name emblazoned over the side. So my mum would get these telephone calls. Says, your son drove by me on a blind corner doing about 100 mile an hour in a van last night, Jan, and you may want to get into a slow down. So yeah, the team van was also my personal vehicle on the street to get back and forward from the race shop. So yeah, not a great, I wish we didn't put the name on the side and we were a bit more inconspicuous. Yeah.
Now, being a journalist, and if we were on the air, you'd be going, okay, Matt did not ask that question. Go ahead and have them ask it. So I'm going to go ahead for all of the global fans that are watching. So when you went out on dates, did you take the team van with you too?
If necessary, if there was another option, someone, mum's car or something, yeah, the team van went also. But yeah, just incredible journey. I'll tell you a quick story. When I first came to the States, so at the end of my Formula 3 season, I didn't have the option to continue in Europe, and I came over to the US. A guy called Kim Campbell, who I'd raced against in superkarts over at Silverstone, had offered me an option to come over and work for his race team. And midway through the season, we were going up to CTMP, motorsport as it was known back then, for Kim to race in Can-Am. He ran an under 2-liter Can-Am car. And the month before, the trailer, the semi-rig, had got involved in a big accident. We had a truckie who used to drive it. And suddenly we were in a scramble to get up to CTMP. And overnight, so I'm over here in the US working with, should I say it, no work permit. I don't have a driver's license, and we have to suddenly get from Dallas, Texas to obviously north of Toronto for a test. We're still putting the car together on Monday evening, and we're testing Wednesday morning. So it's about 1,600 mile drive, and no one thinks we can make it unless we've got a second truckie. Well, I suddenly got volunteered. Never driven a semi before in my life. And the stories to get up there were quite phenomenal. But at one point, at about 3 a.m. on this Wednesday morning, the regular truckie is asleep. Behind me, I've got a Rand McNally Atlas driving through Detroit, because there's no nav systems back then or smartphones. And I'm seeing bridge to Canada and tunnel to Canada. I'm thinking, well, bridge is the safe bet. And somehow I got it all wrong. And I'm downtown Detroit, wedging this semi-truck down towards the tunnel, and all of these alarms come on and all of the security guards start walking towards me. And I'm like prodding the regular trucky dude was his name in the back seat saying, dude, we got a problem. He like looked blurry-eyed and had to come and rescue me because I was okay going forward, but I never put this thing in reverse in my life. So I was there driving a semi-rig with no even driver's license, let alone
I had no idea what a CDL was.
Exactly. So they'd locked me up and thrown away the key, I think.
So did you pull over at like a rest area and then you swapped and you jumped in the driver's seat? Is that how you pulled it up?
Exactly. I never did the hot swap. I did that once with my girlfriend in the UK, which is another story. But yeah, we'd worked 2 all-nighters to start this week off. I suddenly went to sleep, woke up, had breakfast the next morning. I got in and drove from like 8 a.m. till 6. I think we got to Indianapolis, as I recall. Dude then got back in for 4 hours and he worked out, we're not going to make it. And I'm like, no, we can make it. You go back to sleep. That's when I got to Detroit. And I'll never forget when we finally make our way into Canada. Dude says, I'm tired. We're just going to stop. And I'm like, no, we can make it. It was now a race. And I thought we could,
because you got the clock now.
The clock. We can make this.
Fair. We can do it. We can knock it out.
And I'll never forget my thought process when I suddenly saw Toronto 420, and I'd figured it out. It was about 250 miles, and then total depression for about 5 minutes. Then kilometers. We can still do this. And we ended up rocking up there about 9:30 that morning, tested all day, and yeah, we made it. So yeah, that was a pretty cool experience.
I remember the first ticket I ever got in Canada, and he was like, all right, the speed limit, is 80. I'm like, okay, I was not doing 88. He goes, sir, I had you at 110. I'm like, I was not doing. He goes, we're speaking kilometers here. I'm like, okay, yeah, you got me. Yeah, you got me. You mentioned the single-seater era of your career. And when I first heard your name, it's in like Auto Week. I'd check all the results from around the world and all that. And Calvin Fish, Martin Brundle, Ayrton Senna, such epic battles.
They were typically in the opposite order. That was the problem, Matt. That's why the other 2 boys went on to have a lot of success in Formula One. But yeah, it was great to.
But I mean, you held your own. You were podiumed. You won a race or 2. I mean, you were right there, scrappy with some of the rest that would go on to Formula One. You look at that era. What was the most fun part about it?
I think I loved the competition level back then. I'd say like in 1982, Ayrton and I ran against each other in Formula 4 2000. So it was the year prior to the Formula 3 season, which is legendary with Ayrton and Martin going head-to-head all season long. And our race shots were side by side at Snetterton Circuit. Ayrton ran with Russian Green Racing, or I'd run with the year before. We set up our own deal, running on a bit of a shoestring, but we had a great mechanic. Mickey Galter was his name. He used to run Roberto Moreno in Formula Ford with Van Diemen. Van Diemen were like a mile away across the other side of the A11 there, the main highway going through Norfolk. And we got Mickey, which was a big key. He was an excellent mechanic. He really pushed me hard and made me dig deep. And then I really enjoyed the fact that when you run up against someone who's so quick as Ayrton was, Ayrton Senna da Silva, we used to call him da Silva then, not Senna. He just pushed you and he made you dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And he still beat you, but it was by how much you got closer. We won 4 races that year. I finished second 15 times. So you imagine coming home every weekend saying, yeah, we got beat again. But it was to this young Brazilian who no one at the time knew how special Ayrton was. I recognized like he's bloody hard to beat, but I didn't realize how great he was. But it was just a fun year to just keep digging deeper, getting closer. At the end of the year, winning a couple of big races up against him head to head. And that got us the opportunity to go to the Formula 3 Championship. We took over Martin's ride with a BP deal with Dave Price Racing, which was the coveted prize. That was really the only fully funded. We didn't have to bring any money to that table as a fully, you're the guy we're picking, we're going to put you in this car. And it was just not the year we needed. It was just one of those years that really never came together. Ayrton and Martin had Toyota power plants, which seemed to have a bit of an edge. Davy Jones and I had VWs, but Davy had a different engine builder. Not putting all the blame on the power, but we definitely had a bit of a struggle. And I think In retrospect, I think if I'd been a bit stronger mentally at that point, we'd have had a better year, how to deal with the problems we were having, being a bit forceful. But that was just experience. I was thrown this last opportunity before Formula One, and it almost came a bit too early for me. Not too early for others, because it wasn't like I was, massively younger than some of the others I was competing against. But for me personally, I think I needed another couple of years to be given that opportunity and deal with it better. And for Ayrton and Martin, they obviously got promoted. Initially, with BP, I was promised I was going to get testing in the Tolman Formula One car. But then Alex Hawkridge, who was running the Formula One team at the time, said, well, forget Calvin, who's this young Brazilian? And ultimately, they signed up Ayrton for 1984, and the rest is history.
Is that a great example, though, of how important, and we've seen it so many times, where you could have tremendous talent, but if timing isn't exactly right because of all the components that go into place, team, driver maturity, driver experience, the team experience, the motor package that they have, is that a great example just of how it has to almost be perfect sometimes for the lightning in the bottle, so to speak?
I think it does. I mean, I am not Ayrton Senna. Do you know what I mean? He's a special. He can make the difference, and there's guys who seem to have that edge. I think he drew performance out of Martin like he did to me the year before in Formula Ford 2000. He got Martin Brundle to step up his game, so they went head to head for that monumental championship, and Davey and I were in the shadows. So yeah, you need all of the pieces to come together. I think the team and the chemistry is so important. Dave Price was a real character, but he was pretty strong personality. We didn't get along that great that year. We became great friends afterwards. And
isn't it funny how that happens?
Yeah, we were great mates at the end of the day, but that year just didn't work. I mean, I think he was disappointed that Martin left. I came in and weren't getting the results that he felt the team could get. And it just didn't, there wasn't the belief in each other. And suddenly it was just a mediocre season. We had 9 podiums and won a race, but that was not enough. You had to be winning and dominating if you're going to make that big jump up into Formula One.
And talking about making a jump, the transition to the States and getting into sports car racing, kind of describe, because for some people, when they would come to the States, at least you didn't have the language barrier. Maybe some vocabulary was a little bit different,
right?
But you didn't have to learn English. But making that transition to sports car racing, how challenging was that? And, did it go slow paced or did it really start picking up speed?
Well, when I first came over, as I mentioned, I worked as a mechanic for a year. Then I got an opportunity with Mike Guay and Phil Creighton at Essex Racing. They were the Van Diemen and Tiger importers to the US, 2 English guys. Got introduced to them, and they said, hey, well, you're dropping down. You ran Formula 3. You're going to put you in a Formula Ford 1600 and a Sports 2000. But as a way for me to establish myself, this is in 1985, here in the US. And from that, got a network going, got to know Vicky O'Connor, who ran the Sports 2000 Championship. She also ran the Formula Atlantic Championship. Her husband, Bill, co-owned a car. So for 86, their program didn't come together with Mike Angus, who was a previous champion. And suddenly at the second race, they're like, what are we going to do for the year? Well, we'd met each other. They said, listen, if you can put together just a few dollars here, like 10% of the budget, we'll try and make something happen, and got the opportunity. We went out and won 4 races that year and pushed Scott Goodyear for the championship. That then got them a big sponsor with HFC, Household Finance Corporation. They wanted a car the following year, so suddenly that became a fully funded program. And then winning the championship that year, they wanted to know what I wanted to do. I wanted to move up to Indy Lights, ARS as it was known right then. So that's how the journey started. But then after the ARS season, things slowed down. And then it's like, where do I go next? Had an opportunity with Celine with the Ford pickup truck program and their Mustangs. And through that, got recognized through Ford to go to their Gong Show at the end of 89. Was told that I had a full season ride 1 week, and by the end of the following week was told that Robbie Gordon was going to get it instead. So that was just could have been a massive opportunity to have a full Trans Am or GTO ride at the time. Became the endurance driver instead alongside Robbie. We won a couple of races, Daytona and Sebring in 1990. But then it was just picking up the odd endurance ride. So it happened quite quickly, and it could have been an amazing opportunity, but just because Robbie had a brilliant relationship with Michael Cranafus. He'd done a lot with them in their desert truck program. They believed in his raw talent. We all know how great Robbie was and how much speed he had anyway. And they said, you know what, we're going to bring this young kid through. And he kind of stepped around me and grabbed that seat. So, never driven a tin top before until those days. So it was a fast learning process, but it would have been great. But I have no regrets, Matt. Do you know what I mean? I think you can look back and like, the Sennas of the world were better. I have to put my hand in the air and say those guys were better than me. Yes, I could have had a really solid career. I think I could have made it in Formula One, but I'm not Max Verstappen. I'm not an Ayrton Senna, but I could have competed there. And same thing in sports car racing. I think I could have competed for championships as well, because I was very determined and I'd work hard to try and make up for, say, maybe if there's a driver with slightly more natural ability, I think you can make up for it with your work ethic and being very dedicated to the sport and working with the team and getting the best out of the race car. You can still get really solid results, but having this opportunity in TV has kept me in the game. As I said earlier, 50 years now in the sport has been really, really amazing.
See, you hear people say so often, man, if I could go back in time, if I could change that, you know, like the TV show Quantum Leap, Dr. Sam Beckett, going back in time and fixing something. But then it's always the unintended consequences, because now you've changed something else. What was supposed to happen in your life, of where you might be, where you might meet your wife, and then all of a sudden, then you end up with a beautiful daughter, and your whole life, and how the whole journey goes. If you change one thing, all of that might not have happened.
Exactly.
And then you look at, you ran wheel to wheel with Senna and Brundle. Then you go into sports cars over here and the wins and the great times you had. And then it just continues building your book of life. And then you look at everything that you've learned, all the knowledge, and what better way to pass it on than you formed Speedmates and you started being a mentor to so many younger drivers who had no idea. I go back to when I covered sports in Orlando at the NBC affiliate. And I had a conversation with Shaquille O'Neal one time, and he was telling me about the young guys, when you get drafted, they've got like an NBA combine type thing. And one of the courses that you go to was about how to handle your money, how to handle life, things to look out for, that'll be great for your career. And there really isn't anything like that in racing. And was that also another one of those boxes that you could check that fulfilled you, in that, you're paying it forward because somebody had helped you along the way, and now you're helping others?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there were a few drivers who had asked me to work with them, help them, guide them. And at the time, I felt I was too busy. I was, I wanted to fully focus on the TV side of things. I'd had 2 goes at the racing. I'd had a go in Europe, and I came to the States. That didn't quite work out. And I was determined back in the mid-90s, when I was fortunate enough to get the breakthrough for full-time television work with Speed Vision at the time. Jeff Hallis met me up at Motorsport one weekend, and Derek Daly was calling a Trans Am race, bump into those 2 guys, and Derek was going to call a Formula 4 2000 race. I was coaching someone up there, stood there for 10 minutes chatting about the grid, and Jeff Hallis was there, and he said, have you done any television? And I said, well, yeah, I've played out a little bit. He said, do you have interest? We're looking for some new talent. And I realized that was a big opportunity. I wanted to go in 100%. So I really didn't want doing something else like driver management to stand in the way of doing the TV 100%. So that was my main focus. And then I got to a point a little bit later in my TV career where I stopped doing some of my other ancillary work. And there was the bandwidth to do that. Because when you say yes to someone that you're going to help them out, it's so important to these young drivers that you're all in, and even of today, I'll get calls and I'm saying, I just can't do it for you right now. I believe in your talent, but I know once I say yes, that is a monumental commitment for all of us, and particularly on my end, I've got to get you a ride. I've got to get you a better deal. And so I've tried to keep it small, just a handful of drivers without it getting too out of proportion. And I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I made some great relationships along the way. I think Joey Hand, who we'll share dinner with tonight, is, I'd say, one of my best friends, and certainly a driver that I've worked with for now 15 years. And I enjoy that camaraderie and that friendship and the ability to help him and his family and push forward and maintain a career in the sport.
I'll have friends, they'll say, hey, I started watching IMSA, and Calvin Fish, tell me about him. He seems like a cool guy. Coolest guy, hardest worker. and I have the highest respect for, because if someone is a hard worker, that is the biggest thing that impresses me. Not that it matters to anybody, but I love people that are all in. How many hours would you guess that you're going to prepare for the Rolex 24?
Well, I rather than use electronics and iPads and stuff, I handwrite my stuff because I feel I recalled the information better. So, and I'm not a fast writer, so I'm not sure how many hours, but there's a lot of days, and it's already started getting ready for 2026. So the changes, you can't just cut and paste what you did last year because there's so many changes. But that's what I love about it. I've always enjoyed the strategy part of races that we have in sports car racing. I like to kind of preempt when a team makes a decision, whether it's a good or a bad one. And I'm not afraid to go out on a limb a little bit and call it how I see it and project how it's going to be. You don't always get it right, but I think through experience and knowing the nuance of sports car racing and what really drives the decisions in terms of back timing a race and things like that, I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I really thoroughly enjoy talking to the strategists like Peter Barron or whoever and understanding the game and getting to explore that a little bit during a race broadcast. I'm not one to sit with a bunch of different graphs and matrix and that. It's just kind of the seat of the pants feel and looking and sensing the opportunities during a race. I'd love to someday actually sit on a pit box and call a race for a team and maybe play that role. Maybe post-broadcasting career there might be a slot for me somewhere. But yeah, really enjoy it. Just really enjoyed doing the homework, getting to know the teams and the drivers, because then, like, you do such a great job down on pit lane of telling the stories and the personalities and bringing those stories to life. And I kind of miss being in the trenches a little bit. I was on pit lane, as you know, for a number of years.
Oh, yeah.
And I miss that passion and that energy. I mean, the booth is great because you've got more to say. You can talk about the strategy a lot more. You've got, your voice can be heard for more minutes within a race hour. But I think being down there on pit lane is a special time as well. And we have a sport that's so unique that we talk to the quarterback in the middle of the race. Do you know what I mean? Or we talk to a John McEnroe in the middle of a break for the sets. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's what's cool about us. You're right in there. You're right feeling it. You're feeling the passion, good or bad, all of the time. And that's what's great about motor racing and sports car in particular.
What's the most fun part of the job? But also, this job is so challenging. I tell people it's like a 30-year vacation that I also get paid to be on vacation, right, because it's just so much fun and you can't describe it. So for you, what is the most fun part, but also the toughest part of the job?
I think when the race starts for me is when it's fun. When you're in there and you feel that you're prepared and you feel like you need to write the book of the race before that. That's what your homework does. That's what your preparation does. But when the race starts, that's just there in the background. That's just the safety net. If we have a race we don't have many sort of like slow moments in sports car racing. There's always something going on with four classes typically running together and the speed differential between all the cars. You're always on the edge of your seat calling the action. But if you're under yellow or whatever, that's when the preparation comes in. So you feel comfortable that you're ready to go. Doing all those hours and days of prep is not the nicest thing, but it's necessary, and you want to know that you go in prepared, and you don't want to feel that you can get caught out where suddenly you don't know something about the sport or some of the drivers. So race time is when I love it. That's the best.
I mean, the heartbeat for me, when I hear the anthem, it's like the buildup, and then after the anthem, it's 12,006 RPM, fun meters pegged. When you look at your TV career, have there been fun moments, joke moments, anything embarrassing? I mean, I fell off a pit box one time, almost on the air, wore the wrong fire suit one time. Thankfully, we were the same exact size. That's why I didn't notice. But, along the way, there's so many moments that make up your broadcasting portion of your career.
I've seen Derek Daly fall over backwards on pit lane, an IndyCar race. That was pretty funny. And Phil Howard, who now works with Brian Herder Autosport, was sitting on the pit box. I think it was the Rocket Sports back then, and was just killing himself laughing. And I'll never forget one of the first, it was called Champ Car back then, events that I went to as a big test out at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. And I was being sort of like trying to do my homework and study and walking around the car, and I thought I was being super cool. And writing my notes. And I went to step over, it was a relatively low pit wall, and put my foot right over the other side. And they had the big buckets of water that they have the rags on to like throw on the bodywork when the cars came in the pit lane. I put my leg right in up to my knee down water, and I'm standing there like thinking, did anyone here with this high profile team just see that? Do you know what I mean? So those are the moments that you have to try and hide. I didn't have any spare kit with me, so I had to go over and stand in the corner for now, let my pants dry out. But nothing too embarrassing. I remember once at Le Mans, we had some technical issues. As the closest I came to cussing on the air was when at the end of the race, we're doing a whip round after 24 hours. So you're all pretty mentally and physically exhausted. And we're doing a whip round, and they weren't opening my mic, and I was talking because you got talked back. And there was some, like, right as I was right to say something that you wouldn't want to hear on live TV, they opened it, and I just snipped it in the nick of time. But no, I just... it's all good. We work hard. We love it. We all love what we do. The teamwork is sensational. The group of guys and gals that we have on the NBC Sports team make it special. And, it just seems that we can come from different disciplines, and we can all meet up on a race weekend. We obviously have interchangeable parts here. Lee will be, the lead some weekends, and Brian on others, and Dave and stuff. But we all seem to work well together, and it's just like cut and paste, no problem. We can work together and put out a great product and I think most importantly, you have fun. Do you know what I mean? You got to relax, have fun. Serious business, lots of commitment and resources go into sports car racing. But I think the fans can tell if you're having fun as a group, and that comes across in the broadcast, which is most important.
And I think you go back to the entertainment side, and it's all those pieces to the puzzle that everybody brings something different, that all those ingredients together, it makes magic, makes fun, and it's certainly entertaining. I think the booth, another aspect of the booth is the fact that while you guys are just so stellar up there, and I find myself sometimes going, all right, get back to the race, because you guys do such a great job. You make it enjoyable to listen to, and I'll fall into that trap sometimes. But the fact that when you guys go to do a booth on camera and nobody has to stand on a box, does that make the working environment better up there for the shorter folks?
Yeah, it does. When Tanzan's doing the enduros with us, he kind of has to put his legs at a V to drop down to Lee and I. So, and I'll never forget, 1 year at Le Mans, we're doing a post-race synopsis of the 24-hour race, and we're over in on the Bugatti circuit where the TV boxes were, and there's a gravel trap there, so the cameras got set up, and Lee and I are sort of like in between various segments. We're like shuffling gravel under our feet, so one is taller than the other, and finally the camera guy had to keep resetting the camera because suddenly we were out of the shot. We built a little pile of dirt underneath our feet. So there's always that fight for who is the shortest or the tallest of the shorties on our team. And Lee is definitely the shortest, and I am definitely got half an inch on Brian Till, but none of us look above 5'9" anyway. So
when you go back to whether it's your career, whether it's when you were a little kid and you dreamed of what the coolest first car would be, or what your first car, how old did you have to be to drive in the UK?
17.
17.
Yeah, so the moped, you can ride a motorcycle at 16, 50 cc, but you got wheels, you got transportation, so you're not everyone's mercy to get you somewhere. So I had a moped at 16, and then a car or van at 17.
See, here we're really immature. We get our permit at 15. We're just cut loose at 16, and away we went. So when you're putting a period on this stage of the fun meter and looking ahead to as we continue to reel off with the 2026 season, is there one moment, whether it's the start of the race, whether it's the finish of the race, or at night you can see the Ferris wheel, where it's just a magical moment when you're at the Rolex 24?
I think certainly I still get nervous. I think like a driver, you need a few nerves. You don't want to fail. I think the nerves come from you just want to make sure that you get off to a great start to the year. I think for me, typically Lee and I will do the first few hours, and then in the early evening we'll go and stand out above the suites there, because our booth is right alongside the suites, heading down to the infield there, turn one off the oval, and just sit and watch. And you've you've kind of done your homework, you've knocked the rust off. We have the Michelin Pilot Challenge race the day before, so we've already got a race under our belt, and you got those first few hours under your belt, and you just have a chance to exhale a little bit, knowing that the season's underway, and you basically, you did your job, you did your prep, and you got those first few hours, and the racing's sensational already, and there's so much to look forward to. And at that point, it's just like, quick bite to eat, let's get back in the saddle. You want to get in for the next stint.
I cannot wait to get down. I can't wait to do the walk up the grid, all the cars with the flags from all the different nations that drivers are from. And it just seems to build all that energy and excitement. And when you look at, it's really the shortest off season, it seems like, of any major racing series or discipline. And we're going to kick it off in January 3rd at 3 p.m. on NBC. And we're really bookending January when you look at it, because January 3rd at 3 p.m. on NBC, we're going to have our NBC 2026 IMSA WeatherTech preview show. And then, of course, at the end of the month, it just starts with the Roar. And then the weekend following, it's going to be the Rolex 24. I can't wait to see the Rolex signage down there, the clock late at night, everything. I mean, it's one of those things where when you're a kid, that's the event that you dream of going to, let alone having the opportunity to broadcast. So we appreciate all of you fans hanging with us this year. And my pal, Calvin Fish, in studio. Can't wait to start another year together.
Thanks, Matty. Looking forward to it.
All right, we appreciate Calvin stopping on by, and you too, the fan, riding with us all season long. And don't forget, go to YouTube and subscribe to the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast. And also, if you're in a moment, don't forget IMSA.com. All the latest breaking news, you'll find it there. So for everyone here on the IMSA Endurance Hour podcast, I'm Matt Yocum, and we'll see you soon at the track.